The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of our guests and panel members and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any institution any member of the Nova Society is associated with. The material information presented on the Nova Society is for general information purposes only. Reproduction or dissemination for the purpose other than education is prohibited without express written consent of the Nova Society. We'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society, and today we continue our conversation around the news that Kamala Harris is probably the presumptive nominee for president from the Democratic ticket. And today we turn our attention to who might be her vice president pick, which we believe she only has about 3 weeks to make that decision. And then Brooke asks us questions about potential lawsuits and some of the different scenarios the Republicans may try to derail the Kamala Harris election possibility. So let's listen in.
So who do we think? We have a short list of 3. Governor Shapiro. Who else was on the short list? I see you smiling away, Scott. Why you look very
because it's such a parlor game, you know. Who will be the vice president? So intriguing.
Yeah. Which cell is which? Where is the little marker? Which?
Yeah. So Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona, who's a former astronaut, and I believe he was a fighter pilot. He would certainly be on the short list. She needs to win Arizona, so that's not bad. Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, who was a attorney general as she was before that, and it's another state that she needs to win, would certainly be on that short list. Last week we talked about Roy Cooper, the governor, very popular Democratic governor of North Carolina, a state that she would love to win. So if she's going to go in that direction of finding somebody who can help her win a state that she needs, that's reasonable and logical to look at those 3 guys. I've also heard that Admiral Stavridis is in the running because she wants somebody who has a little bit of an edge, and he was the supreme commander of NATO, as well as a longstanding admiral in the U.S. Navy. So, I mean, there's a bunch of different people. I think that those are probably, of course, none of them will, with my record of predicting things, none of them will actually get in. But those are the ones that I think are outstanding right now.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm the guy, Cooper. Yes, but the chances of winning North Carolina even with Cooper are still a little shaky. I am going to go towards Shapiro. He's younger. He's been a governor, and he is a term-limited governor, so he can't run again. So he's going to be out of a job anyway. Whitmer, I always thought was a pretty good choice. Unfortunately, I don't know if the United States is ready for 2 women to be totally in power. Not that it should matter, but that's the way people kind of think. I've heard that her and Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom, are not on the best of friends because of her, being the AG and a prosecutor and all that. And they're just not that tight. So I don't think, and she doesn't need California. So I'm pushing for Pennsylvania, which I think is one of those Rust Belt states I know she needs. And I think he would carry that state for her. Remember, there's 6 battleground states. She only has to really carry 3. If she can get Michigan, if she can get Pennsylvania, and any one of the rest. Mark Kelly was one that I was very surprised that was brought up because I think he'd be a good choice. First of all, he's ex-military. He's an astronaut, as Scott said. He's a pilot. He's done his service to the country. He probably brings her Arizona and maybe even helps her in Nevada. So that's something to keep an eye on. The fact that she's from California might help her with Nevada anyway. So it's a little tough to make that determination there as to how far that would go. I am going to push, I'm going to say Shapiro, because once again, and I've said this all along, she was a senator. She was a prosecutor. Absolutely fine. You needed somebody that's been a chief executive. And Shapiro's been a chief executive. And I only pick him over Cooper because I don't think Cooper can bring North Carolina over the line for her. But I think that Shapiro can do it for Pennsylvania. The interesting thing about all these people that we've talked about, every single one of them, is they are considerations for other positions within her administration. If this goes down ballot, you got to be a little careful with the senators that you pull, because if you're going to maintain a majority, you've got to maintain it. You can't, even you might have the most qualified person there, but you can't pull them out of being in the Senate if you're going to lose your numbers that you need to have. I think, as I said, now it's fun. This is going to be fun. And watching the Republicans turn themselves into pretzels in an attempt to find something. Now they can't complain. They can't say anything about age anymore, because Kamala Harris just so happens to be almost 20 years younger than Donald Trump. So it will be it's going to, now we're in the fun part. Finally.
She's a few months younger than I. They had put together a montage of her laughing and said that she had a crazy laugh. I thought there was nothing wrong with her laugh at all. It's very hearty, and she was having a good time with the conversation. I mean, if that's the best they can do.
That would be my comment. If that's all you got, you ain't got much.
That's a little tan suitish.
I have a couple of points. One is, when should she make her decision? I mean, clearly there's a lot of work to do. What would be the most reasonable time for her to make the announcement of her, assuming that she is the nominee, which I'm assuming she is? When must she make this choice, and when should she make her announcement? One concern that I really have is the election or the installment in many of the swing states or red states of MAGA people into positions of running the election certifications, so that even if Democrat ticket is the one who wins, they will not be the one certified because of fraud on the part of the Republican, while of course they're already yelling that I forget who it was who said that we already are not going to have this upcoming election will not be free and fair. It's going to be fraudulent because the Biden administration has put in place a structure where the upcoming election will absolutely not be free and fair. It's going to be fraudulent in favor of the Democrats.
So in other words, if I lose, I'm going to take the 5th grade answer. You must have cheated. And that's really all that is. It is nothing more than that. And yes, putting people into position in the states that could very well impact this because of, their interpretation of the rules. Once again, I go back to the fact that we're talking about a party that today is saying, well, the Democrats are taking the democratic process out of the hands of the voters, of the Democratic voters. And now what they're saying is, so we're going to help you out. We're going to take the process away from everybody in our state, and we're going to cook the books. And that's all that's being said. And now I'm going to be the law and order guy. I'm going to go back to being a regular Republican. This is where we start charging people with treason. Plain and simple.
Except I don't know how anybody's going to know that.
It ain't hard.
If MAGA people are in charge of certifying the elections in these other states, I mean, how would one determine if there were fraud on coming from the MAGA people. Does that make sense?
Well, because each state, the governor has to certify it. Governor has to certify it. And when you reach the level of governor, unless you're from Illinois, and you know you're probably going to go to jail at some point in time, I don't know if you want to take the chance.
Okay. Well, what about somebody like an Abbott or a DeSantis who's definitely in the camp for MAGA?
Trump's going to win Texas and Florida. Who cares?
Okay.
What are they going to do? Not certify their guy winning?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Or in a swing state like a Nevada, for instance, if the state goes to the Democratic ticket.
Well, Brooke, there's a lot of scenarios you could come up with on this. I mean, you could come up with
that
all sorts. And the fact is that, again, do you have a few of the crazy governors that might try this? Yeah. DeSantis, probably. Abbott, probably most definitely. But you go beyond that pair. You go beyond the Marjorie Taylor Greene of governors. You don't get the, hey, I'm going to risk my freedom for anybody else. I mean, these guys didn't get to be governor, regardless of their policies, because they're that stupid. They got there because they have a wherewithal. And I would say that you're not going to find too many governors. There's the governor who got the call from Trump while he was sitting there certifying the election.
Right. But if Trump wins legitimately, but if they can make it look legitimate, then he has pardons that he can give to anybody without any kind of consequence to anybody, because now the Supreme Court with their immunity.
Rabbit hole. I can't do it. There's too many. There's too many rabbit holes that people can go down onto this thing. I mean, and the world could stop turning tomorrow. Okay.
Well, true.
Yeah,
I see where there's a lot of interconnections.
We're going to have plenty of time to talk about this. It seems a little premature at this point to even try to figure out, how the Republicans are going to try to cheat while claiming that the Democrats are cheating. We'll figure that out. And some of those avenues were closed off by legislation in this last session. So I'm not really sure that they're going to be able to do what they would love to do. I'm sure they would love to do it, but hopefully this will be a big enough win for Democrats that it doesn't that we don't ever have to hear the name Donald Trump again. That would really, what a great motivator that is for so many people out there.
Project 2025.
Yeah, just we don't want to hear this name anymore. He's had his time and it's done. And let it go. Just let it go.
Yes, thank you. So, what about assuming that Vice President Harris is in fact becomes the nominee? What about her own announcement of her VP pick? I mean, when should that happen, and how long does she have? Because there will need to be debates, right, between Vance and the nominee, I'm assuming, presidential nominee Harris's VP pick.
Right. So Brooke, I'm assuming that it'll be just before the convention, just as Trump did it, that's generally when they make that announcement. It could be a week before. There's only 3 weeks until the convention, so you got to give her at least a couple of weeks to try to figure out who she gets along best with. I guess the nice part is she seems to know most of these people from working with them, either as attorneys general or as governors or whatever, while she's been vice president. But she's got one of the nice things about it is, when you start looking at all these people, you begin to say, wow, they really do kind of have a deep bench. I mean, we haven't even mentioned Pete Buttigieg, who would be a tremendous vice president, who always manages to say the right thing, was fantastic on Bill Maher's show on Friday night, and is obviously really sharp. So there's a pretty deep bench in the Democratic side that I haven't really seen much of on the Republican side. Once you get past the Peter Thiel bros, it seems like it's pretty thin on that side. So J.D. Vance and Josh Hawley. The third one lost to Mark Kelly, who I still think is a really intriguing pick. Another thing about Mark Kelly is Arizona is another border state, and right now the border is actually in pretty good shape, and that may take some of the sting out of that line of fire for Trump to bash her with the border, because frankly the border is in reasonable good shape right now, and isn't a chaotic mess or whatever. There's no invasion going on, whereas the legislation that Trump managed to kill would have done a better job, that the executive orders that Biden gave have done the job. And so I don't think that's going to be a big attack. And I think from her standpoint, Kamala Harris has been fantastic about pro-choice and codifying somehow a Roe v. Wade to make national access to women's health a real issue. And there's your election right there.
Do you think that it would matter to voters if Vice President Harris were to select Pete Buttigieg, the fact that he's gay?
I mean, I hope not at this point, but I don't think it's going to be Pete anyway. But I certainly hope not. There's as Mark said before, even another woman like Gretchen Whitmer or Gina Raimondo might be a bridge too far for some voters. So yeah, I could see Pete Buttigieg being a bridge too far for a lot of them. But the fact of the matter is that when it comes to being an articulate spokesman for all things good, he's fantastic, and hopefully he has a role to play there.
So what about these potential lawsuits?
I don't. So there's two avenues of lawsuits that I can see. One is that the money that Biden Harris raised. That's one lawsuit that I've heard the Republicans want to file, and I don't think that matters. I mean, there's no nominee until somebody accepts the nomination, and that's not going to happen until the convention. So while Joe Biden, had been the leader of the ticket, there's nothing to say that he couldn't step aside and let her step up and just keep that money. The second one is that in various states, apparently there's some kind of Mike Johnson hasn't been specific about it, but he seems to think that there's a possibility of keeping the ticket off the ballot in those states. I can't believe that that's true. I believe the parties, not the nominees, are the ones who make sure that they get the proper amount of signatures and all that needs to keep them on the ballot in every single state. So I don't think it was ever going to be, Biden securing that. It was always the party with Biden as the potential nominee.
Let's keep in mind, this is not the first time that we've had an open convention. 1968, Hubert Humphrey comes in and gets the nomination for the Democratic ticket. This is not something new. You go back to the original nominations. Back when the Congress, the House of Representatives decided whoever finished first was the president, whoever finished second was the vice president. All the different, ways that we've done this. This is not terribly. This shouldn't be terribly unconventional to us. It is what a two-party system leaves us with. As Scott says, right now, you don't have a nominee until you walk into the convention and the convention elects you. There is nothing that says that all delegates have to be good faith delegates. Some states do have that rule, but a lot of them do not. So lawsuits, yeah, you're going to try to find anything you possibly can. And here's the thing that gets me is that shows me how afraid they are. The more lawsuits they bring, it's sort of like when Trump was trying to overturn the election. The more lawsuits you bring and the more times you lose in those lawsuits, it shows how desperate you're becoming. And like I said, this is the thing that Democrats have been waiting for, I think, for Joe to step down. And before we get into anything else with this, anybody that thinks that this was some 4D chess planned move or conspiracy, you've lost your mind. This was not planned. This was Joe Biden realizing you've lost a step. People that he trusted, and we've talked about this before on this podcast, people that he trusted, people that he respected came to him and said, Joe, time to give up the ghost. And he decided to do it.
Pretty amazing.
So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsors for this episode. BH Conflict Resolution Services, a full-service dispute resolution firm offering expert and cost-effective mediation services to couples, groups, and businesses. BHCRS can be reached at www.bhcrs.com. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, and Podkite, who does all of our analytics. iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source for music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms. We'd like to thank all of our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershworth, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.